Is this where we make the obligatory random dad joke about, haven't seen you in a year?
Oh, Christ. I guess so.
Yeah, Jerry would always do that. Our former co-host Jerry Smith, that's always his favorite joke this time of year. So I kind of, as much as I cringe when I hear those dad jokes, I think of him fondly when I think of it. But hey, man, Happy New Year!
Yeah, Happy New Year indeed.
Did you have a good one? Did y'all celebrate? Do it up right?
Very low key, as dictated by the COVID pandemic.
Right.
As a lot of us are dancing around, so. Yeah, it was very, very low-key.
Nice.
So low-key, I was asleep before the new year hit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty lame. Sorry, kids.
Oh, no, I mean, look, it was New Year's somewhere.
Indeed.
You're a man of the world.
I watched the New Year's thing happen on the CNN.
Yeah.
And I was like, I made it.
Living in Tokyo time.
Close enough.
Look how far you made it that far.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Did you tune in to CNN for the thing?
No. So we don't actually have... about 4 years ago, we unplugged from like cable and satellite and all that fun stuff. Now we still, like a lot of people, we exist through the streaming services. And I will say our smart TV has some applications, like we can get like CBS Live and stuff like that. So we're connected to the real world. I'm not living behind a screen, but we don't have CNN or MSNBC or any of that fun stuff.
Well, I typically don't watch news channels ever.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I don't know what happened, but it ended up on CNN, and Anderson Cooper was drunk.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's the thing. Him and I forget who the guy that he usually...
Another Andy.
Yeah, Andy Cohen.
That sounds right.
Maybe it is. They typically run CNN's New Year's Eve, and they get, several shots in, and usually it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was funny seeing Anderson Cooper.
Just, toast.
Couple of shades. Couple of shades in,
that's a thing for them. They so normally we have Raj and I have a couple of friends that we go and hang out with at their house and do like a big New Year's thing. But like you said, COVID this year kind of we locked it down and didn't do much. But normally we watch it over there and we'll flip back and forth through a couple of channels, and it is pretty hilarious because they'll have guests on and stuff who are equally as in their cups as they are, and always some awkward moments. And Andy Cohen will say something that really pulls Anderson Cooper out of his shell.
I haven't watched. I used to watch when Kathy Griffith was on there.
Yeah.
And the last time I watched when she was on there was the time that they didn't cut her mic going to commercial in time. There was a guy heckling her off screen, and before they could cut to commercial, she yelled, "Shut the fuck up. I don't come to where you work and knock the dicks out of your mouth."
I love her.
That was gold that'll live on in my memory forever.
You just stand up and applaud at that point. Just like, yes.
What do you say? Is someone yells that at you from a podium on high? It's like, well, I guess I'll go home now.
Well, especially if that somebody is Kathy Griffin, like a little 5' nothing fiery redhead who's just ready to go, like constantly, like she's just full on tilt.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, this is not just a New Year's celebration, although we are happy that it is now 2020. We're going to see what this year has to offer, but this is another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast, and as usual, I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And we are Craigless, as we were. He is coming back, kids. We promise. We're going to get him back on here, hopefully before 2023. He's a busy guy. He's got some family things taken care of, and we, as usual, send a lot of light and love over there to them. This is episode 210. As we continue to carry on this show. And if you are new, maybe your New Year's resolution is to listening to some more comic book podcasts. You went to the search engine of your choice, which, search engines, it's kind of like Coke in the South. Everything is Google. We're Googling, what are you using to Google? I'll use Bing.com to Google.
That's right.
What kind of Coke do you want? A Sprite?
Exactly.
So maybe you found us that way. We want to say welcome. This is a little comic book conversation show that we like to we put on every Sunday morning. Just me and my buddies sitting around right now. Me and my buddy Matt, we get together, have some coffee. It's kind of like the old men who sit around the diner on Sunday morning and just reminisce about the good old days, and the good old day happens to be today. Some fun stuff. So we're going to chat about some books, most of which are recent. So if you hear what, go check the show notes and stuff. I try to put the titles that we talk about. We don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So go check that out. Make sure you're not spoiling anything for yourself. You can always hit the pause button, come back later. Because this is entertainment. This is what we read this stuff for. Some escapism, some entertainment value, quality of art, quality of life, really. So we want you to enjoy that. But we welcome you. So what we're going to do, just to give you a little landscape here, we're going to talk about a book that talk about a couple books that we read this week. Just kind of set the mood. Really, it's really just lighting some candles before that you get that come hither look. And then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of a book that we both read. And then we're going to tell you about some books that we read separately and kind of expound on those just a little bit. So, and then we're going to give you a taste of what is to come next week. So, stay tuned, sit in, buckle up. It's going to be a fun show. At least I think it is. I'm not Nostradamus or anything, but
when you lay it out like that, it really feels like we get a lot accomplished.
We do work, son. Hashtag do work, son. We really do cover a lot of ground for like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 30 minutes. We talk about some stuff. None the least of which is just checking in on each other because we're friends.
Indeed.
And that's what we like to do. And so, with all that said, let's talk about some funny books. What do you say?
Word.
Tell me about some. Drop a short stack on me this week. Tell me about some stuff you read.
My short stack consists of, to begin with, Marvel. It says right on the cover, a Marvel event.
Ooh.
So that argument is put to bed with this series, at least. Devil's Reign, number 2 of 6. This is by writer Chip Zdarsky, artist Marco Cicchetto, colors Marcel Minez, letterers Clayton Cowles. Are you reading this, Caleb?
I read the first issue.
It's great. This is great.
This is where you and I we depart. I want to say this. I read the first issue after I listened to you talk about it. I enjoyed you talking about it way more than I enjoyed the book. So, but again, I don't want to take anything away from it. I love that you love it.
I tend to do that, from what I understand. This one, the story's carrying right along with Mayor Kingpin's initiative to make vigilantism illegal within New York City. As a reminder, he has turned over the Baxter Building and Mr. Fantastic's lab to Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
And we further that storyline a little bit in this one. That might be my favorite part of the story.
Okay.
I love a good Dr. Octopus, and he is not there to serve Kingpin, basically, is what's going on there. So give me more mad scientist Doc Ock, please. Thank you. I
am going to follow through with it. I'm going to, I've started it, so I'm going through all 6. And hopefully this second issue will pick up.
Yeah. I mean,
for me.
It's only 6 issues, right. With the creative team. I mean, you got to try not to like it, I think, by the time you get to the end of it, because Zdarsky's such a good storyteller. Also on my short stack is number 2 of 3, Robin and Batman by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. Really interested to see where this goes. Killer Croc. I love Killer Croc. I feel like he's very underused, underutilized. So I really dug it. I was not thrilled with the way Jeff Lemire wrote Batman in the first issue. Seems this one was a little bit easier to, he was a little bit easier to tolerate, I guess I would say. That's not really the right word. It just felt a little closer to, what we know as Batman.
Right.
But anyway, the Killer Croc thing is really what's got me on the hook for this book. And it's, it's only 3 issues. It's like, wow, this third issue, a lot's going to have to happen.
I was going to say that he's going to have to really drive it home.
Yeah.
And I think he can. I mean,
of course he can,
100%.
And then thirdly on my short stack is Conan the Destroyer.
Ooh.
This is a number 1 out of a 2-issue limited series, as it says right on the cover. This book came out in 1985.
Okay.
So it is a comic book version of Conan the Destroyer, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Right.
Interesting. No creative credits whatsoever in this book.
The hell?
Not even the editors.
Really?
Nothing. There's no creative credits in this book whatsoever. Now there was a dark time in Marvel's history where they did that.
That is stupid.
It was very brief. And here we have an example of them doing so. I know who the artist is.
Well, I was going to ask, because as you hold that up, I see something scrawled across the front of it, which is pretty cool.
Bob Camp did the cover.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But the internal art, I could recognize from a mile away, and I'm sure you do as well. I
want to say, looking at it, is it Buscema?
It is very much Buscema.
Now, I'm saying this. I'm looking at it upside down from across the room. As Matt and I socially distance.
Right. So John Buscema definitely did the pencils here, and it looks like Terry Austin did the inks.
Okay.
That too was a team for a long time, and this is what it looks like. this has the feeling of a book that was thrown together,
Right.
Because Buscema usually does a lot more backgrounds. And there's a lot of panels with minimal backgrounds, if any. So it just feels like this book was rushed.
Okay.
Based on that, he didn't miss a beat with his figure drawing in action illustrations, which he was absolutely unreproachable.
Well, and he's made for drawing Conan. Like he's made for drawing of that style.
Well, Conan was his favorite thing to do. That was his favorite thing to do back in the day, and it shows. So that's my short stack.
Awesome. Well, talk about a movie that I really, really, really wanted to love.
Yeah.
I tried real hard.
Yeah.
Tried real hard.
Had a acquaintance in the shop on Wednesday when I picked that book up. Was like, oh man, that's my favorite Conan movie. And I was like, oh really?
That's
and he's like, oh yeah.
Bold statement, sir.
I can't help it. That's my favorite Conan movie. And I was like, oh well, I'm assuming as a true Conan the Destroyer fan, you already have this, or you're some kind of poser. And he's like, yes, I have that, of course.
Now we say that, obviously just in jest. So it's one of those things like we all have a bad movie that we love, and I'm using air quotes when I say bad movie. So like just like I just said to you earlier, I love that you love things. There are things that I like that you yourself don't find that appreciation in, but you enjoy the fact that I enjoy them. So it's one of those things. So if Conan the Destroyer is your favorite film, like you are, I'm sure, in slim company. But hey, I'm glad you dig it. Right?
And it's one of those situations where that was their first experience of Conan the Barbarian. So that's the one that lives on in their mind. It reminds me a lot of people's favorite Batman is Adam West Batman.
Yeah,
because that's the first time they ever saw Batman.
Well, look, and at the young age of like 5 or 7, I'd have to go back and look and see when the movie came out. But little Caleb loved Batman and like whatever one where like Arnold Schwarzenegger played Mr. Freeze, because I was a child and I saw the world through the eyes of a child and the bright and pretty color lights. Like that was a movie I enjoyed at that period. of time.
Now I want to make sure and let everybody know that there's real appreciation one can have if they go back and watch the Adam West Batman.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's campy on purpose, and frankly, it's hilarious. It really is funny. There's some great comedy lines in there. However, there is no redeemable quality in the Joel Schumacher Batman and Robin film. So I want to make sure that we make that distinction.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Dude, you talking about Adam West Batman? Like, it is campy on purpose, but give me Eartha Kitt as Catwoman.
Oh yeah.
Any day
Julie Newmar.
Julie Newmar, Romero as the Joker.
I
loved him because he really he played Home the Clown.
He did.
So
I'll never 100% forgive him for not shaving the mustache.
Okay, that's fair. But look, it was.
It's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm not hating for it. I'm just like, dedication. Come on.
Look, if you're a person who likes to dabble in, call it like an altered mental state using certain substances and stuff, go do your substances and then go watch the King Tut episode. It's like it's a trip, right? And it's supposed to be. It's just fun. Like at the end of the day, it's lighthearted, and it was for children.
Yeah.
So
see,
in the same way that Shrek was for children.
I
right?
think Batman. The Adam West Batman was for adults the same way the Airplane movie was for adults.
Okay.
If you go back and watch the movie Airplane and then watch Batman and Robin, you will appreciate both in the same way.
You mean Batman?
Or the Adam West Batman.
You just encouraged our listeners to go watch Batman and Robin.
That was oh my God.
You realize that.
I need a sneeze button to edit that out or something.
Okay, so I want to talk about my short stack, and I'm going to start off just kind of like you did with the House of Ideas, a little Marvel. So. Wrapped up a mini series this week. Actually, last week. Again, I'm a little bit behind. My stack groweth, so I've actually knocked it out. I'm reading this week's books now. But the Trial of Magneto, number 5, ended this week. I enjoyed it. It didn't land the way I thought it was going to land, but I appreciated the direction they went in. Some wrongs were righted, a little redemption, and one of my favorite characters at Marvel. Now, this is by the creative team of Leah Williams, who I'm a big fan of. I think she does amazing work. Lucas Wernick did the art on it. Edgar Delgado, wonderful colorist, did the colors with Clayton Cowles doing the letters. Without spoiling what happened, this is the story about how the Pretender became the Redeemer. That's like one of my favorite lines in the book. So I really, really appreciated the ground that they covered there. Some excellent moments. Maria Lovett's Porcelain is number 2 on my short stack. This is from Ablaze. This is a weird conglomeration of Alice in Wonderland and Pinocchio and some psychedelic murder mystery, where this girl gets sucked into a dollhouse that is being lorded over by a master, and all of these other souls who are in there have been turned into creatures not unlike marionettes. And she has to make her way through this really psychedelic-driven mystery adventure to find her way to escape. And she carried some baggage into the house, and she has to leave some baggage behind. Is the quick and easy of it. So thoroughly enjoyed that. I love Maria Lovett's art. I've loved her for a long time. She is. The first time I saw Maria Lovett, it blew my mind. Now, I will say, and this is, like, she does what she does very well. She has a particular bag of tricks, and she sticks with them. Now, I haven't seen a lot of growth in her, which is something I look for. Like, I don't necessarily need her to change, but she hasn't changed up her style much. A lot of her characters look the same, whether you're reading Porcelain or whether you're reading the book that she did with Azzarello. She has a particular style, and she returns to that bag of tricks a lot, but it's gorgeous. So I think it's a lot of fun. And then last but certainly not least, over at Image Comics, a series that I've followed for a long time, and it was actually how I fell in love with a particular writer before he became just a big wig over at Marvel, who's writing some of their major titles, and that's Mr. Donny Cates. But it's Redneck. This is number 31. It is the first of a 6-part finale to the title. Donny Cates, Lysandro Ethrin did the art. D. Cunif did the colors on it. This is called Texas Forever. We are beginning the long march home. So for this, it is wrapping up storylines. You still see they are battling the devil. They're doing all kinds of crazy, weird, futurist vampire stuff. But when I say futurist, it is all steeped in this idea of just like frontier Texas. These are Texans through and through. It's about family. It's about heart. It's about what happens when you've made the deal with the devil on the other end, and you've got to fight the repercussions, and screw the devil over a little bit. So Donny Cates is a very talented writer. I don't have to tell people that. There's a reason he is who he is. He's killing it. I'm ready to land this plane. As I said 2 arcs ago, he gave us 6 issues, and I thought, okay, he's not phoning this in, but he is. We need to end this. This is we're nearing the natural end of where this should be, and I don't want something to go on longer than it needs to, just because it's something I enjoy. So I'm really looking forward to these next 5 issues when he brings the series to a close, because it's really fun, and that's my short stack.
Nice.
We really do talk about a lot of different books, just a lot of different conceptual books. And for me, I love concept, right? I love, especially when you get into your big 2, these avatars of these characters, where they're more tropes than anything. And you spoke about somebody in your short stack that I think is very talented in looking at these characters as not necessarily people. They are people, but they are also concepts. They are living, breathing concepts that are going to stand the test of time. And that writer is none other than Jeff Lemire. Now, I've in the past year started to I have to give a caveat when we talk about a Jeff Lemire book. I can't be subjective when we talk about Jeff Lemire. I've lost the capacity to do so. And for better or worse, I think. I don't know if it's one or the other. Jeff Lemire is solidly on my Mount Rushmore of comics writers. He's one of the 4 for me, and that's not for everybody, but that's just for me. So I have a really hard time not being subjective, I should say. I can't be objective. But he gave us another book, and it's so funny. I'm about to have to go through. I say have to. I'm about to go buy a brand new, shiny, really pretty, highfalutin, fancy drawer box. That's one of the long ones. I'm going to have my own Jeff Lemire file.
Oh,
so instead of keeping things separate,
It's gone too far.
I have my Hulk file. I have my Conan file. I'm going to have my Jeff Lemire file.
Oh, my gosh.
And my Avengers file. I have my own thing for it.
Still.
Yeah, I'm not letting recent history destroy my love for the world's mightiest heroes. I won't do it. Just because there's some recent sins. Why'd you got to bring up old shit, Matt? Damn you. We got together and read a book this week. I'm moving us forward.
Good idea.
It's written. It comes from the Distinguished Competition. It comes from DC. It is one of their Black Label books, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
This is written, like I said, by Jeff Lemire with pencils by Doug Monkey, inking himself, colored by David Barron. And this book is called Swamp Thing Green Hell. So if you haven't read this, again, I gave you a spoiler warning earlier. We're going to talk about some of the tenets of this book, some of the things that make it work, make it not work. What for me make it work. We'll see what Matt has to say. Matt has a better ability to do these things than I do. So before we do that, though, give me kind of your 30,000-foot view of this. How'd the book treat you?
I liked it.
Yeah.
3/4 of the way through, I wasn't sure I was going to continue on with the series. Frankly, it was just, one trope that I'm severely burned out on is the apocalyptic trope.
Yeah,
man, you tell me a story's apocalyptic and I'm gonna tune out. I'm just So reading this, that was just my personal baggage. It wasn't because it wasn't well done. It was just my personal baggage when it comes to apocalyptic stories. However, by the time I got to the end of it, I'm like, okay, all right, now I want to see where this goes.
Yeah. Same a little bit. I am intrigued by the idea of Swamp Thing in the apocalypse. I'm intrigued because, especially now that he's not simply a character, he's like a god of nature. And interestingly enough, the genius that was Alan Moore set up in his now famous and legendary Swamp Thing run, he set up some seeds. He planted some seeds, especially with the character of Woodrue. And you got to remember, this is way back in the day before people were talking about global warming.
Yeah.
I think this was even, I'd have to go look at the dates and contemporary history, but it's really before everybody was worried about like Aquanet destroying the ozone layer. Like, we weren't really thinking about those things. And Alan Moore, if you go back and read that, he basically is warning us about global warming.
Well, the global warming, climate change, pollution, all that stuff was a topic, but it was back before it was part of the everyday nomenclature. I mean, it was something you had to kind of be plugged into on purpose. So it was definitely before it went, quote, mainstream.
Which is why it was ripe for an Alan Moore story to reach in there and pluck it and do something with it. So it's interesting to see kind of the culmination of that, those seeds that he planted grow up and deal with a world-ending destructive force that is an apocalyptic story set now, where we do talk about things like global warming and urban decay and reclamation of plants and everything else, and the end of humanity, and will the world survive even if people won't. So it's interesting to see that culminate now in a time where this is part of our zeitgeist, like it's a part of our current conversation. And Jeff Lemire takes that and runs with it a little bit. So I was also intrigued by the future state Swamp Thing stories that Ram V wrote, that little mini, because that takes place in the future, and it takes place after the Green and these parliaments have really dealt with humanity and shoved it off the table. So like, it's a concept I haven't really thought about as far as this character goes. And Jeff Lemire being an incredibly adept, incredibly talented, flexible writer, runs with that. So with that being said, I loved it. I'm staying on this again. That's zero surprise for me. Like I said, I have a deep and powerful love for Jeff Lemire in my heart. So it is strong. It's real. He doesn't know it yet, but we're linked at the soul level. So so what's happening in this story? And feel free to interject, Matt, especially with, like I said, with the Jeff Lemire book. I kind of lean on you to throw some stuff in there that maybe I looked at with the rose-colored glasses or something. But this, as Matt said, is I don't say post-apocalyptic story. It's in the midst of the apocalypse, kind of. Humanity is still existent. They are still doing things, but they are struggling to survive. The world has fallen to pieces around them, through the humanity's own actions, and now these are folks who are grabbing the remnants of what's left. It actually, some of the things he set up reminded me of Sweet Tooth. The world that Sweet Tooth exists in. It's like right in the middle of that story, where everything is falling apart. You have an encampment of people who they live on a coast, kind of a lighthouse situation. They go out and they scavenge. They cast nets into the sea in hopes of pulling up food or treasure or useful things. They are a group of people who are having to repurpose everything that they find. Because nothing new is being produced. Nothing new is being made to aid them in their survival. So they have to make their own tools, and they have to recraft and really struggle to survive. Like they're trying to maintain some semblance of existence, which is a thing that both annoys me in apocalypse stories, but also I find interesting. It's like finding creative ways for writers to imagine what they might have to use to survive. So that's what's going on in this life. It really takes place. It focuses on a father and a daughter as they are just trying to exist, and this world has kind of sunk inward, and now there's a new mythos about the people around. And it does take place in the DC universe. And so as all of these people are trying to pull themselves together and just make it through, you do have the Parliament of Trees, who are getting together to decide the future of plant life. And you have the Red, the power of meat, so to speak, who are bartering and dealing. And then you have the Parliament of Decay, who gets together and look, part of life is death, and so you guys have your own thing, but you need to feed us too. We actually have the upper hand right here. So all of these novel, I say novel, they're not novel now, but all of these novel concepts to Swamp Thing and Swamp Thing mythos, these hierarchy of life have gotten together, and they're starting to barter over the future of the world. So you have both this boots on the ground view of life and this not unlike a god. I mean, they are gods, deciding the fate of everything at the same time. And it's an incredible scope, the zooming in and the zooming out of what's important to these people, and the calculus that goes into deciding how to really tell this story is really interesting. The father and the daughter get together. I think her name's Anna is the daughter, and she's a curious young girl. She's a person who, she was born into this world. She doesn't necessarily know the dangers of everything because her entire life has kind of been dangerous. She's not unlike Carl from The Walking Dead. Like, I think there was a little bit of that roped in there, and I may just be building a bridge to connect it because The Walking Dead is such a major part of our apocalyptic culture and stuff. But she was born into this world, and so she's not a safe person. Like, she keeps taking risks and stuff, and Dad tries to keep her safe and tells her to stay away from the lighthouse where a certain person lives, and is a mythos has grown up around him. And while all this is happening, of course, there are the other side, the people who, the humans who seek to take advantage of the condition that our townspeople find them in. These are raiders. These are people who don't want to go through the trouble of put forth the effort of perpetuating their own survival. They'll let these other poor saps over here do the hard work, and they'll come in and take it. And so they roll in, and they're like, hey, you owe us food, and weapons and tools and everything else. Pay your tithe, or we're gonna just wreck shop. And Dad's like, bro, you gave us another month. This isn't what we agreed on. And the leader of this merry band of bandits is just like, no. you had an agreement. You decided this was a thing. We're just here. Like, we hold all the cards. We have all the bullets. We have the guns. You just decided there was this agreement and that you had time. And I didn't make that agreement, and I'm not beholden to anything. So you need to come with it now, or we're gonna just kill some folks. And these are bad men. These are morally corrupt, morally bankrupt individuals, and there's a history to them. It turns out that the leader of the raiders and Dad are brother-in-laws. That is the brother of his late wife, a woman who died, possibly by her own hand. We're not really sure at that. Jeff hints at some of that, but it comes from somebody who's you can't trust what he says, so I don't know. So they collect their wares, they get what they're quote unquote owed, and they go back to where like some oil rig that they just camp on. But the townspeople have kind of had enough. They're ready to fight back. They're ready to throw off the yoke that these people have placed on them. And all the while, Dad is just like, no, guys, like, this is a bad idea. This is a terrible idea. You're going to lose. But he's outvoted. And so the townspeople get in their little boats. They jump on their pirogues or whatever you want to call it. These are not high-tech seafaring craft.
No.
And they make their way to the oil rig, and they wreck shop. They trash the place. But it's unfortunately for them poor timing, because at this same moment the Green, after, remember earlier when I said that the Green had bartered and made a deal with the Red and the Black, and they're ready to just end everything. That plan launches, and something that looks a lot like Swamp Thing emerges, and is just destroying everybody. Now, it's not Swamp Thing. It is a fabrication of the Green. It is an elemental, but it's not Alec Holland, quote unquote, Swamp Thing. And I mean, it's just indiscriminately killing everyone. But there's an old man who lives on this hill, and he's a keeper of stories, you might say. He's a keeper of secrets. He knows the legends. He remembers the world before, the world of heroes. And he also knows a secret about this lighthouse that we've all been warned about. Like, there's this old curmudgeonly man living in the lighthouse who used to be somebody. He used to be somebody tethered to magic, and not necessarily to the good magics, but it's somebody who's adept in the dark. And so he says, okay, this is where we have to make our last stand. And they go and they meet this person, and they said, hey, look, it's now or never. You've got to help us. And after a little bit of smart-ass discussion, some moves are made. And these moves, done by this person who is integral to the magic of the DC universe, to the myth and lore of, like, the dark side of things, draws forth Alec Holland Swamp Thing. Now that's I won't spoil who the man in the lighthouse was, but Alec Holland Swamp Thing is part and parcel of this story, and they can start back. And that's really where the story kind of ends in this first issue. There's a lot that happens in this book, and I'm being semi vague on purpose, but that's where we go. And issue 2 is going to pick up from there. I can't wait to see what they do with it, because you got to remember, this is not only a battle between two sects of humans, it's a battle between humanity and the elementals. It's a battle between the parliaments of the world that humans no longer have the right to barter with. So, but Alec Holland's going to be an intermediate in that. So I cannot wait to see. And I know the character that shows up is a favorite of yours, Matt.
Yep.
So I'll kind of pick up the ball from there and talk about it for a minute.
So, the character that's finally revealed to be in the lighthouse, excuse me, I really, really like that character. One of my favorite DC characters. However, since his creation, he's been taking a lot of weird directions that are just, in my opinion, just spoil the essence of the character.
Yeah.
The essence of the character is wittiness. Wittiness is the essence of the character. So I just really appreciate his relationship with Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just never get sick of seeing those two done well.
Right.
Done what I might, according to how the character was introduced correctly. Mm-hmm. The whole point of the character being introduced, and it's sticking to that relationship. So I love that. That's how this book ended, and just the interaction between those two and what Swamp Thing's reaction is going to be in confronting the Parliament, I really look forward to.
Yeah.
I love the character of Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just feel like the character's not been well served for a long time. And I think to really appreciate the character of Swamp Thing, you really need to read at least some of the Alan Moore run.
Yeah.
Because it changed everything. And, there's a quote whenever in that Alan Moore run, Abby is arrested and taken to Gotham City for trial. When Swamp Thing goes in pursuit to rescue her and runs across Batman, there's a line in that story where Batman is talking to Gordon, Commissioner Gordon. He said, "This thing is as close to a god as I've ever run across." And that line really struck home the difference in the character of Swamp Thing and pretty much any other character in the DCU, especially the DC universe, especially at that time.
Yeah.
And what Alan Moore transformed him into being. He, and what it being an elemental really is.
Mm-hmm.
And the inconceivable power that the character has versus the way the character was created.
Yeah.
But on that note, I want to make sure and say that, big ups to Len Wein.
Right.
Because Len Wein brought Alan Moore in to, pick up the mantle of Swamp Thing. And when Alan Moore talked to him about, well, I'd really like to rewrite his creation and go a different direction, Len Wein's like, go for it. It was just like no hesitation, supported it, and that's really nice. Len Wein was able to put his ego aside and let somebody else take the character in that direction. So, I really appreciate the Alec Holland Swamp Thing. The different iterations where it's not tied to Alec Holland's consciousness just weakens the concept for me, because the struggle of Alec Holland trying to hold on to his humanity as being Swamp Thing is intriguing to me, because he has no humanity. He only has humanity because he imagines he does,
right?
And that's what's just fascinating about what Alan Moore did with the character. And and again, I just love when people take D-level characters that have more or less failed in their popularity, and somebody comes along and breathes new life into them and turned that essentially failed character into, a super compelling character that you can do so much more with.
Well, and while we're giving big ups, I just want to say, and I'm stepping on my own toes and slapping myself on the hand here. We keep saying Alan Moore Swamp Thing. It is Alan Moore Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is his, but that book is not that book to me without Stephen Bissett and John Tuttlebom.
Yeah.
They brought, like, it's easy to say Alan Moore Swamp Thing, but Alan Moore's written a bunch of books that people really don't remember. They brought such a gravitas to that book, and the design and the quality. Really, after Len Wein, I think, like, they took what he did and just morphed it and advanced it so much and gave that book so much texture, real texture, that it's not the same without them.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to give equal credence to them for making that book as legendary as it is.
The presentation that the penciler and the inker did on that really put it over the top, because if it had been done by like a more traditional comic book artist at the time, because it wasn't done in a house style of DC, it was different than anything else. It looks grotesque, and frankly, when I was a kid, that's what turned me off of it. It was for a more mature audience. That I see the value in that now that I didn't see it when I was a kid. As a kid, I was just like, this is gross. Well, it's supposed to be gross.
Yeah. Well, it really was at that time, it was bringing over all of those British artists, all of those 2000 AD type people. I mean, Alan Moore is the one who really did I can't give him all the credit for that, but he was part of bringing that wave forward. And like you said, it's not the same art that you would see on a book. Like, he wrote one of my favorite / the best Superman stories.
Yeah.
But with a house style that really worked for that.
Yeah. And with Superman, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. But with this character, it wouldn't. So picking that right artist and having those British artists, the 2000 AD style kind of come over, like Bissett, really fits in well with what would become / was, again, history, and Vertigo.
Yeah.
It defined it. It defined what Vertigo was. And later on, this became, sits right on the shelf with books like Hellblazer and stuff.
Yeah.
So it is such an amazing, and in this book, I think that they really did pick the right person to carry on that legacy, because there is a visual tether in Doug Mahnke's work that that harkens back to that. It harkens back to Bissett. It's not the same.
Yeah.
But
it's got that scratchy, pencily line to it.
It fits in that school, right? Like there's a connectivity to that, which I think that there needs to be, because this is a legacy character. It's a legacy title at this point now. So having that artist, and you know, like you said earlier, that whenever you disconnect Swamp Thing from Alan Holland, that diminishes your ability to enjoy it. I don't particularly have that problem. I think this current Swamp Thing run is amazing. Like I've said it on the show before, I think Ram V is, like, he's my breakout creator of the year, but I think he's doing a phenomenal job with it. But the artist on that book, and I don't have it in front of me right now, God forgive me, I don't know who, I can't think of who's doing that art. Similar to Doug Mahnke is doing that, where he takes the gravelly feel of it, and just really drives home the fact that this is not pretty. It's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And in that story, again, you're dealing with the global repercussions of people turning their back and failing to appreciate nature, and the fact that we need nature to survive.
Yeah. And
it also deals with family. And it, you know, there is something about, you know, and Jeff Lemire's doing it here with the father and daughter connection. Ram V's doing it there with the connection between brothers. Alan Moore did it in his book. There is something that is inherent about family and the different types of connections that come with family, be it a lover or a blood relative, that pushes that story too. It is integral to that weave of those stories. And it just, for me, I just get giddy when it's done well and done right.
Yeah.
So it's just, I love the book.
Yeah.
I really did. Doug Mahnke's just killing it. Now, you said the word presentation a while ago. I love that they're giving us the bigger Black Label book on this.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting the magazine sized. It is wonderful, because you actually get to, you know, more surface area with Doug Mahnke's art, and with Boren's colors. And it needs it. It deserves it. The detail that he's putting into these pages, you need the space to pour over it, because he's giving you those, you know, he's giving you all the curves and the weaves and the ugly of the plants, and he's giving you all the fibers and all the rusts of the metal, and showing you just how the urban decay is taking place. And he spends time on it, and so I love that we're getting that, like, larger picture.
Yeah.
That to me is stunning. So, and it's always easy to talk about where we want the book to go, but I like with this first issue, I just live with it. Like, I'm just living where we're at with it right now.
Yeah. I'm always, it's extremely rare for me to think, I want this book to go this place, or I think it's going to go this place. I'm always just letting the creative team do its thing. And
yeah, you're much more hesitant to do that than I think I am.
Either the ride's for me or it's not. And I don't try to dictate where it goes. I just let it do its thing.
Man, so for me, 2 thumbs up on this.
Yeah, same.
I loved it. So you mentioned, before we go forward to our books of the week, though, you mentioned, like, the first half of the story, you weren't feeling it. And this is like, and again, if it's just kind of just nonchalant, that's fine. But when it comes to Jeff Lemire books, I'm always interested, because, again, I have such a hard time picking at those nits, and they are there. I'm not saying they're not. But so what was it in that first part of the story that made you question it?
It was just the setting.
Okay.
The apocalyptic setting, however you want to phrase it. I'm just burned out on that trope, man. So reading about, you know, the struggles of people in this set, I'm just like, oh, Christ, here we go again. And that's it. It's just personal baggage.
Yeah. Okay, that makes complete sense. And again, I brought some of that baggage forward with it too. As I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, parent, child, end of the world, fighting raiders. There's some of the mechanics of, like you said, Walking Dead in that stuff.
Yeah.
Mad Max.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in there, because it's become a trope, and I think you have to have those. But it really is a story about people. So, and the connection to the land. And Jeff Lemire writes the human condition. Probably, as Craig says all the time, he writes it better than most people could ever dream of.
Yeah.
So
I have to agree with that.
I think it's going to be a 3-part series.
I don't know how many it is. A 3-parter would sound right for a Black Label book. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, they're not really long runs. I don't see where it is indicated on the book itself, and I haven't read up on the release
Yeah.
information. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3-parter.
Somewhere I remember seeing that it's 3, and I could have just pulled that from the ether. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who knows
why not?
Where these things come from. But again, presentation and going back to more in Bassett's Swamp Thing. Have you seen the Absolute Edition slipcase covers?
No.
Oh, like I think we have the one up here at the shop. I'll show you. As far as shelf porn goes, my God, like they are, like just mind-blowingly gorgeous.
I would like to see the original pen and pencils or pen and inks for that run.
Yeah, they need to do. Surely they can do an artist edition of that.
Because it's such that Stephen Bassett art is so scratchy and organic looking. That is the most organic looking penciling I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Everything just looks so asymmetrical, straight out of the swamp. I mean, you feel like you're in the damp, gross, insect-infested swamp reading that book, man. It really is.
I grew up in a swamp. Like, I grew up in just off the river, the White River in Prairie County, Arkansas. I'm a river rat kid, man. So, like, I grew up in that area, and that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Like, when I saw those pages, and when I see the pages in here, this is a little bit more salt life than that.
Yeah.
But, you can smell the moss and the rotting wood.
You just want to swat mosquitoes reading that book.
Those, like I said, those tubers, man. They just do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check out that Absolute Omnibus edition because it is gorgeous. I've got both of them at home, and like I just look at them, like cock my head to the side, just dream of it. But yeah, go pick up Swamp Thing Green Hill. Jeff Lemire, Doug Mahnke, David Barron is doing the cover of it, the colors on it, and it is well worth your dime. It's gorgeous. So spend some time with it, commit it to memory, focus on it, contemplate these things. Not on the Tree of Woe, because don't start your new year off on the Tree of Woe. That's not a Conan trope you need in your life. But I do need something else in my life. I need Matt to tell me a story. So do that, buddy.
So my book of the week, I went and dug through my archives, and after much internal debate, I picked up to talk about, from Image Comics, the Maxx.
Yes.
#1.
Yes, sir.
This was released in 1993, in March of that year, in fact. So I was reading Image as it was launched and released. This is like what a lot of people call like the second generation of Image, after the initial wave of all the creators that launched the Image comic line. Within a year or two, they started bringing on other artists.
Launch is a word. It was more like a slow release.
Yeah.
Less combustion and more of a flow.
Like an explosion more than a launch.
Right.
Launch sounds too constructive. So when the Maxx came out, I was a big fan of this creator, being Sam Keith. So when this came out, I was going to pick it up without knowing anything about the story, which I didn't. I was like, Sam Keith sold. I became a fan of his with all his Marvel Comics Presents work.
Yep.
When he was doing all the Wolverine stories.
I was going to ask what you thought about his Wolverine.
Loved it. Oh, man, I loved it. It's great stuff.
Unlike anything I've ever seen
Yeah,
before.
very unique artist. I really appreciate the unique take, his own style. You can recognize it. You don't mistake it for anybody else. Sam Keith's one of those artists that, stands on his own. So I really appreciated it at the time for that.
Drew one of my favorite depictions of hell that I've ever seen in Sandman.
He did the first arc for Sandman. Really liked that. Oh man,
beautiful.
I hated that he didn't stay on it. He was picture perfect for that.
He did, but I did, but I didn't. Like, and I read that in hindsight. So, like, knowing the artists that were attached to it, part of me was like, I want more Sam Keith in this world. And I think you get more Sam Keith here and there, like an issue or so. But we got so many amazing artists.
No, it's true.
doing part of that book. So I do and I don't.
So this issue starts off with it's first of all, looking at this comic. The panel designs are bizarre. They're just, when I was reading this as a kid, I'm like, does this mean something? Because these panels are such weird shapes. Weird shapes. That being said, it doesn't make the story hard to follow. It doesn't make the panel-to-panel transition difficult. Mm-hmm. So there's something to be said by that. It's a very non-traditional panel layout, but it doesn't skip a beat like, oop, I shouldn't have read that panel. Should have read that one first.
No, he controls your eye.
So it's masterfully done. But it starts off, there's a woman being dropped off from a taxi. And what's going on is the taxi driver's in cahoots with a couple of thugs. He just drops off victims. They mug them, and then they split the money. So these two thugs are in the midst of mugging this woman, and the Maxx shows up. He jumps out of his cardboard box. Apparently he's been sleeping in this alley. And he's getting ready to straighten out these thugs. Mm-hmm. Police show up and arrest the Maxx because by the time the police have showed up, he's already beaten the hell out of these thugs. While in the police car, the Maxx starts dreaming or having an hallucination, whichever, you're not really sure which is which. Right. And he's in what's called the Outback, and it's this wild wilderness. The Maxx looks very strange. He's wearing a huge headdress of what looks like grass and feathers. He's having he's visualizing this woman, and she's with a leopard or a cheetah, so it's just full of delusion, and you don't know what's going on. The next thing you know, he's being bailed out of jail by her back in the, quote, real world. Mm-hmm. So the book itself, whenever this came out, first of all, the art is amazing. Amazing. It is so good. It's done on, it's not the glossy paper that Image would come to have later, which I'm not a fan of the glossy paper. This matte finish, full bleed matte finish, I much, much prefer than the shiny gloss. But whenever this book was coming out, it was completely different than anything else Image was doing. Mm-hmm. It was in its own category, because everything Image was doing were action movies.
Extreme.
Everything was an action movie. Yeah. There was no mystery to anything. There was no gravity to speak of. It was just action movies. Yeah. When Spawn started, you could argue that point was Spawn, frankly. But with the exception of Spawn, I can't think of anything that wasn't a straight-on action flick. That's just a shallow, nothing below the surface, frankly.
Not out of that first set. I'm trying to remember when Witchblade came out, because Witchblade was definitely an action movie, but there was also some
that came later.
That was more like, that was like the third wave.
Yeah, that was
later. Like more. Yeah, there was a moral to that story, kind of.
Yeah, that came out much, much later, the year 2000.
Okay,
something like that, when that came out, 2001. Yeah, so about 8 years later, that is when that came out, and things like that started coming out much later.
Yeah, they realized they needed more to their stories, than just punch bang pow.
Yeah, maybe. You're giving them more credit than I am.
I'm an optimist, Matt.
Yeah. A
dreamer, you might say.
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe Savage Dragon. You could argue Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon really had some gravity to it, but I think that came later. Yeah. Upon its launch, it felt very much like a traditional comic book trope movie. But the gravity in that story really came out as further you went along. Mm-hmm. I still say Savage Dragon holds up better than anything of the initial launch. Yeah. But anyway, I loved the Maxx because it was so weird, because it was so different. You had no idea really where it was going to go, what was going on, as opposed to all the other books that were really obvious.
Yeah.
In the next issue, they're going to get in more fights. That's really all that happened.
Very mechanical, very...
Yeah, Wildcats, Young Blood, everything. It was all,
really great visuals, but the stories were color by number.
Yeah.
It's what it felt like to me. Or having read those in hindsight.
Yeah. Not that, I was a big fan of them. The action movies are fun. But this just stood out as, one, this was like an artist really being creative, really having some very definite skill in figure drawing, I should say. There are scenes where action is taking place, and it just delivers differently. Like there's weight to the characters in what they do. There's one panel where Julie, the female character, has got one knee up on a stool, and it's like there's weight to that. You can really see them, the way the body is positioned. It looks like she's really leaning on that stool. And and if you look back and through the other books, you're not seeing that. You're seeing a lot of action poses. It's delivered differently.
The devil is in the details. That is accomplished with just a few small lines.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly where to put those lines. And one of my favorite things about Sam Keith is, he's not set in a style like you talked about. Like he can flip stylistically in a heartbeat. And if you see that some of his Sandman stuff, but you see that in this book as well. Like there's stuff in here that looks like it was drawn to mimic an Archie book. There's obviously stuff that's 90s Image stuff, but they're like the image that you showed a while ago that has the face with the jaguar or cheetah or some cat. Like that's the cat itself is very lifelike. There's some reality there, but then you look at her and there's a softness to it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, his reminds me of Bill Watterson. Mm-hmm. Because Bill Watterson was a great cartoonist, but occasionally in those Calvin and Hobbes panels, he would draw Calvin in when he's imagining himself back in the dinosaur era.
Yeah,
these dinosaurs look amazing.
The Draftsman comes out, right?
I mean, they're like illustration level. Yep. Like this guy can really draw. He can really draw, and Sam Keith's like that. Mm-hmm. He draws his cartoony figures, a lot of, exaggerated features, but then he'll draw something in the wilderness like that jungle cat, we'll just call it a jungle cat, and it looks amazing. Yeah. I mean, it looks like a completely different skill level has come out in the guy. So it reminds me of Bill Watterson a lot that way. For people that missed the Image launch, frankly, in a lot of ways, congratulations. But in others, like, I would recommend the Maxx. Yeah. Everybody go back and read this because it holds up because it's so weird, but well done. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't figure out, is this guy living in reality? Is he mentally ill? Is it a fantasy story? You just don't know what the hell is going on here. But it's easy to read. It's not text heavy. It's a lot of fun. Eventually it was turned into an animated series on MTV. MTV's second iteration of Liquid Television, which I was just thrilled about when that came out. I never missed an episode of Liquid Television 2 when the Maxx was added to it. And it's a straight up adaptation.
Nice.
Straight up adaptation. Oh, really?
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's and they even nailed down Sam Keith's artistic style for the animation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the comic book. Literally, it looks like the comic book come to life. A lot of fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Loved it.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's the only reason I watched Liquid Television. It too, because I loved Liquid Television back in the day. Liquid Television was a place where animated shorts, right. And it was all weird stuff, bizarre. Some of it wasn't even animated. They had this weird marionette puppet series about a woman biker and her raucous adventures. I mean, it was bizarre, very strange. They had stick figure theater, and it's literally just stick figure drawings, reenacting Shakespeare or Night of the Living Dead, or right. I mean, the Liquid Television was bizarre, and I loved every second of it.
I'm sure there's YouTube channels where you can go and watch all of that stuff.
I mean, Viacom doesn't let them stay up,
right?
But I even tried to buy, because Viacom did not release the Maxx on DVD or anything for years, like 15 years after that show went off. I was on eBay trying to find. Right. A version of it that I could buy, and you could only find like pirated versions. And again, Viacom would shut it down as soon as they got wind of it. You can get it now. I think you can buy it digitally. But it took them like 20 years to get their shit together and release it. And it was hugely popular. I mean, it was a big hit for them when it came out.
So, yeah, you're sitting on money. Like, why,
yeah.
why are you doing
It's like, come on, Viacom, get with the program.
90s nostalgia Matt is my favorite, man.
Oh, man.
I love when you get on the I had no idea you were about to talk about MTV.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Yeah, back when MTV had some really quality stuff. I mean, they used to have it was a really good avenue for creative people. But again, this is before the internet where you could just post anything on YouTube.
Was it MTV that came out with Daria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daria was in it.
Yeah, I watched Daria.
That was a Beavis and Butthead spinoff. Yeah.
I didn't know it was a Butthead spinoff. Okay.
Oh, yeah, Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, Daria was a Mike Judge character on Beavis and Butthead, and she got her own show.
I did not know that at all. That's hilarious, and it fits so well. No, so I love Daria. That
was
like people are like, okay, that makes sense. There was one episode where she was mad at the cheerleaders and she was trying out for the cheerleaders. Her cheer was rah rah rah, yell yell yell. Who gives a damn? We're all going to hell.
Yeah,
it's just I was like, I love this.
I liked the teacher on that show that hated men.
Yes,
and that was a good show.
Good times.
Yeah.
Seriously, got to go revisit that. All right, you spoke about the Image of years past. I'm going to talk about a book that came out from Image in the year of our Lord 2021. And that Image book, it's actually not a comic, floppy form comic. It's a graphic novel, and that's because that is the way that this creative team has started to put out their stories. You've heard the phrase "crime doesn't pay," right?
I have.
Well, that is patently false for Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips because they're paying them very, very well.
Indeed.
They are making a lot of money off crime, and Sean Phillips' son as well, I should say. Their newest, I call it a project, maybe like the world that they are playing in now, the story that Ed and Sean and Jacob Phillips are writing is called the Reckless series. And it focuses on the singular character who is he's a detective, but not like the kind of detective that wears a badge and like is sanctioned, and he's a private detective. And Ethan Reckless is, in a lot of ways, he's a man out of time. In many ways, this is a crime noir book, largely set in the 80s, early 90s, but from a dude who never made it past the 70s. Like, I know that's a weird road trip to go on in your brain, but that's like the structure of the stories is very like 1920s-esque. Ethan Phillips, like the world they live in is very early 90s, maybe mid 80s, but like he's a dude from the 70s. Like he's just that kind of person. So he's really time out of place. This is the third book in the Reckless series. First two are awesome. They're a lot of fun. Go get them. This book feels more personal for Ethan Reckless and maybe for Ed Brubaker than a lot of them. And some of those stories are very personal. I think this one really gets into it. Because largely this story is about the relationship between Ethan and his assistant, his best friend, his only employee, Anna, and their ties to the movie theater that he owns, and the job, and just really how they like she is actually his right hand, and he doesn't know. Like, this is the one person he's let get close, and is not only works with her but considers her an actual friend, and that's like the only one he has. And so what happens to a man like that when she walks away, or when he pushes her away? That's what the story, the umbrella version of the story is. Anna and Ethan met after he bought this theater, and again, it's an old theater. He's a lover of black and white movies. He's a lover of Golden Age Hollywood. So he needed a place to kind of work out of, to live out of, and so he saw this building for sale. Nobody was bought it. It was decrepit. It was boarded up. So he picks it up, and then sometime after he was renovating it, some punk kid started drawing an anarchy symbol on the front door. And you're like, how, like, he was getting pissed because he'd go and he'd wash it off every day, and the next day it would come up. And he's a detective. He's like, I can't let somebody deface my own property. I got to figure out who this is. And, he was ready to go bust some heads, deal with the young punks or whatever. But it's this young girl that he catches doing it, and it's Anna. It's the girl that would grow up to be his assistant, his partner, not physical relationship partner, but just like work partner, and in a lot of ways a life partner, but not in a romantic sense. And he was like, what are you doing? And she's like, okay, so my dad used to work in this building, My dad was the one who was a mechanic. He knew how to make the reels work and everything, and I grew up here. And this is the closest thing I've called a home. I've lost my dad now. He's gone. Mom just a worthless person. And so I knew that this was bought. I knew it was getting boarded up. So I wanted to make sure this place remained some sense of flavor. And the cool thing, and how he really finds out who she is and is doing this, he starts watching her. She's got an old key to the front door. And she would break in when he wasn't there, and she would just go watch these movies. And at this early time, Ethan had been trying to get the projector to work and run, but it wouldn't. And she knew how to fix it. And so he just waltzes in one day when she's like kicked it, got her feet on the seat in front of her, and she's watching. I forget what movie she's watching, but it's a classic Hollywood movie, and she's just going to town enjoying it, and he busts her, and he's like, no, like, it's fine, I'm not after you, it's cool. First off, how did you make that machine work? And second, do you want a job? And so that's how their partnership got to be. And over the years, she becomes a really good detective. She's excellent at like finding people's backstories, digging through the ephemera, like finding the secrets. She's really, really good at that. But she's a young woman at this time. She's a young punk kid, and as she grows up, she reaches her 30s by that point, to the place that they are now, where the story takes place. She's kind of gotten a little bit sick of Ethan's shit. Like, he's being an overprotective big brother. Like, he, keeps like pushing away her boyfriends and is just being a little bit too helicopter parent, which is, not what you would think he would be, but this is his person, right? So he's very reticent to let anybody else connect with her, and he doesn't realize he's doing it. And so one day he pushes too far and she quits. And about the same time that she quits, a case lands in his lap, and it is, this is Los Angeles, right? And so it's this Los Angeles city commissioner, somebody who's, he works at City Hall. He's an elected official, and he is upset because some of the area that he represents and the area that he grew up in is. He's been double crossed. Like, he bought it. His dream and his goal was to build it up, to raise it back to its former glory. He's a person of color. He's a black man, and so like he wants to take care of his black neighborhood. He wants to invest in these black owned businesses in these minority communities, and so he can't get the loans that he needed. So he got in bed with some old white man real estate tycoon dude who set it up, and he didn't read his contracts all the way through, because the contracts in there was a rider that says, hey, if we don't develop this in a certain amount of time, I get to make the decisions. So what happens is the reason he got in bed with this guy anyway was because he couldn't get the loans that he needed. The banks wouldn't give it to him. He didn't have the history. And this is somebody who's fairly well, like he's on the city board for Los Angeles, but he still couldn't do what he wanted to do with it. So he makes this deal. And then he realizes on the back end that this guy is preventing him from developing the real estate the way he wants to, because he wants to take it away from him. Yeah. And he sells it to a company called Allmart, which is going to drive these mom and pop businesses out of. They can't compete. Like, it's going to just continue to deteriorate. And so our city official wants some dirt on this guy. So he hires Ethan Reckless to go dig up some past on him, find something he can use for blackmail purposes, or just for just publicly ruin him. Something like that. And Ethan starts to do that. But he's having to go by himself, because his partner's not with him, and he gets himself into some trouble, like you might imagine. But he is, he got to where Ethan got to be the person he is because he's talented, he's skilled. So he connects some dots, and he finds out that there is this entire web of sex trafficking, that this actually goes back years, back into the 70s, where I think it's the 105 that splits L.A., did a lot like 630 did here in Little Rock, which ran right through minority neighborhoods and displaced a lot of people and ruined businesses. And if you go and you look at this place now, the west side of this freeway is shiny, and it's close to the beach, and it's the other side is Compton. It's the hood. It's places that like unofficial redlining took place and stuff. And this business tycoon actually had something to do with that. So there's an entire legacy of really destroying these small communities from this man. And without spoiling the end of the book, they get some dirt on him. They realize who he is, and like he's running some stuff that he shouldn't be running, and paying off officials and is in league with dirty cops, just and sex trafficking and running an unofficial brothel. It's all kinds of stuff, and they get the dirt that he needs. But the client, the city official, just can't let Ethan finish the job the way he needs to, and he blows the whistle way too soon. You don't fuck over a guy with this much money and power without there being some ramifications.
Yeah.
And he starts to rain hell down on Ethan, on the city official, on Anna, and it causes them to coalesce, come back together, have to work together, causes them to build some bridges that they had burned before, gets everybody back into it, but puts them in a lot of danger, which doesn't completely go away by the end of the story. And in pure Ed Brubaker fashion, there's a turn. You find out just really who the tycoon is, and he's not who he presents himself as. There's some history there. Does this really cool thing where they're like for any other writer, like the fact that the bad business tycoon had a secret identity would have been the crux of the story. Like that would have been the story. For Ed Brubaker, that's like a couple of panels.
Yeah.
Like it's extra flavor added to it.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Walter Mosley, and Walter Mosley does some of the same stuff. Dashiell Hammett did some of the, like, you think of Dashiell Hammett and you think of the books that he wrote, where even the title of the book being the Maltese Falcon. Think of that book. The Maltese Falcon's not really an important part of the story.
Yeah.
Like it's just a MacGuffin. Like it's a thing that they chase around, but that's not the important part of the story. For any other writer, that would have been the thing. He knows his craft. He knows it so well. He knows this area, Ed does, that he really just drives it home. He's one of the best. And it's just to show how great that this team is. Ed and Sean Phillips are. The book is formulaic, right? Like this is the right way to do these crime stories. Like he follows a formula, and he's done so through a lot of his books.
Yeah.
And it's a classic formula. And it's a formula that works, and it doesn't feel stale. It doesn't feel like he's retreading. He holds you in the palm of his hand the entire time that he's telling you this story, and you kind of know what's happening. I think he throws in those little twists and stuff just to keep you entertained, but you know where he's going with the book. But he does so in such a way that you are just captivated, and you are compelled to keep flipping those pages. And I am compelled to keep turning back to these books. I know what they are. It is the world's best meal. It is comfort food. And I adore it. I adore it. As we make our top 10 lists, because we're coming close, I think at the end of the month, you and I, hopefully Craig's going to be back by then. We're going to do our top 10 favorite stories of the year, as we always do. I don't know that this book is going to be on it. Like I've got some crime books that's going to be in my top, like my favorite crime books. And they're novel. They do different stuff. They aren't formulaic. They break that formula, and that's why they're there, and why maybe this book isn't. But this book is a book that I'm going to go back to and read. Years down the road. I'm like Ed Brubaker's, all of his stuff is stuff that's got a rereadability factor to them, because it's it's something and it's always going to fit right.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know that some of the books that are going to be in my top 10 list are going to have that. I don't know that I'm going to want to revisit them in 5 years, because they've done what they've done. It's no longer new, quote unquote. It's no longer like that. I've already crossed that threshold.
Yeah.
God, they're good, man.
Yeah. No, they're the best at writing crime in comics right now. I cannot think of anybody that's close. They're excellent.
Yeah, just so fundamentally skilled at this type of writing, and that's all they need to do anymore. Like they branch out a little bit. Like I think we read a book, I forget what it was earlier this year, that was it was a Brubaker book, but it wasn't a Brubaker and Phillips book, and it was fun. It was nice, but there was just these two, man.
Yeah.
These two just married to the hip. Like, I love these two together.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read Destroy All Monsters, it is like I said, it's the third version or the third installment of the Reckless series. I hope they revisit it. It is a book that is quintessentially about Los Angeles. It is a noir book, while at the same time being something especially like 1970s. Like it's almost like you just can hear Robert Redford's voice while you're reading this book. It's a lot of fun, man. Look, before you put the stockings away, go buy this book and shove one in it. It would have been the perfect Christmas present. So
nice.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. great stuff. And it's a hardcover, so it's gonna go on my let everybody see this bookshelf.
Nice.
My shelf porn in my office. So
yeah.
Worth the money. Did you read this? Because I know you're a fan.
I haven't, no.
Yeah.
And the only reason I haven't read the past few of their releases is the price point.
Yeah. They are. So this one, $25.
Yeah.
We don't pay that because we get a discount at our local comic shop. But still, even $20, it's pricey. I don't actually know. Are the pages numerated in this book? You're getting they're not, but you're getting 100-something pages of book in this. So, if you, I would argue that if you buy 4 floppy comics and you spend $20, if not more, because that's where they're at these days.
Yeah.
You're actually walking away with less pages. So I think it is worth, but it's that, do I want to put $20 down on this now?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So I completely get that. But fortunately, you have a friend.
Yeah, I would definitely like to read it. Thank you.
So I'm sending that home with you because I want you to read it. And that's my book. That's my suggestion. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, nice.
So all right. Well, that was a lot of fun. As always, this is arguably my favorite time of the week. Just getting together with you and Craig and talking about these funny books. Just to relax and enjoy what we do and enjoy this hobby.
Yep.
But fortunately, we're not the only ones who like doing this. We have friends. We have people we know who also enjoy this thing. And you can find those folks if you go on our social media sites. You can join our little Facebook group. Not as chatty as I wish it was. I wish it was chattier. As always, I'm imploring people who aren't me to post about what they're reading or what they're playing or what music they're listening to, what they're enjoying, and just spur on a conversation. And, a lot of that comes from different places. I will say shout out to Mike Delvecchio, our friend, because he is the first one to drop a meme on our page, and it gets a lot of laughs, and people will just chat about things. So
nice.
Thanks to Mike for doing that. I hope you have a fantastic 2020, buddy. But come there. You can also find us panels of what we're reading or our thoughts on things on our Twitter. We're at SFG Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter. Check that out there. And if you're somebody who's doing your own indie stuff and you want to maybe us to talk about it, shoot us an email. We're southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. Or maybe you're somebody who doesn't want to put your thoughts out on the socials, or you don't even do the socials, and you just want to say, hey, dude, that Destroy All Monsters Reckless book was fucking bee's knees, man. Thank you for talking about it. Shoot it to us. Or if you want to relive the glory days of the Maxx, you want to write us an email. We'll read it, and we would appreciate that. So go find all those places. Now, the way we like to end a show, as much as you can say we liked it, because we don't like to end a show. That means I have to leave. But we like to give people a taste of what's coming out next week, something that we're going to pick up that we set the menu, so to speak. We think we're going to enjoy, but we don't know. So what's coming out next week that you're grabbing off the shelf, buddy?
So I'm really looking forward to this book from, this is a AWA release. Nice. Now, it's from a writer I'm not familiar with, Jeff McCombsey. Not familiar with Jeff McCombsey, but the artist is Mike Deodato, who I'm very familiar with, and Lee Lowridge. It's called The Fourth Man. 3 dead bodies lay in a rural morgue, all murdered in a span of 3 weeks. It's up to 2 detectives from opposite sides of the tracks to determine who put them there, if the murders are linked, and what, if anything, they have to do with a pair of dueling car dealerships. It's inspired by what's called an outlandish true crime story. I can't wait to read this.
I want it.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in this release this coming week.
I'm going to end up grabbing that. I actually didn't know that was coming out, so thank you.
Yeah, I'd not heard of this.
So the book that I think folks should go pick out, it's actually a Dark Horse book from a creative team that have worked very, very well together before. And the book is called Apache Delivery Service, and it is by the great Matt Kent with his, like I said, longtime collaborators Tyler Jenkins and Hillary Jenkins. Number one, if the cover just looks awesome. It's the skeleton of a soldier with a Vietnam era battle helmet on. So I want that. So here's the short and dirty of the book. 2 haunted men are on a hunt in the jungles of Vietnam, searching for clues to a missing treasure trove of gold that was stolen from all over Asia by a Japanese general during World War II. Eventually, they find a series of hidden caves up in the mountains near the coast. Bodies start showing up, murder victims and mutilated corpses, but there's a rumor that the caves and the gold are protected by terrifying witches that have been living in the cave systems for thousands of years. As our warriors travel deeper into the mystery, they learn more disturbing facts about each other and become paranoid of one another as they get closer and closer to the gold. It sounds claustrophobic. It sounds weird. It sounds like a mix of a crime story, a mystery story, and a war story. All things I know Matt Kent can do very, very well. I am a huge fan of Tyler Jenkins and Hillary Jenkins together. So this book is tailor made for a person like me.
Interesting.
So I'm gonna grab it and check it out. So
Yeah.
I love this creative team. So
Nice.
excited. Dark Horse Comics just got bought.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, but still killing it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing with that. Well, with all that said, again, we hope everybody had a safe, warm, fun, entertaining, enjoyable, and relaxing New Year's Eve, and work that hangover off on the 1st. But we're going to keep doing this, as far as I know, for the next year.
Yep.
Because I love it. So, and Matt loves it, and we appreciate you giving your time to listen to this. Just talk about books.
Yep.
Talk about stories, because that's what makes up culture. That's what makes up our world, is stories, and we happen to like this delivery mechanism through comics. So enjoy yourselves, be safe, Happy New Year, go pet a puppy or something, and go forth and love some comics.
Happy New Year.